So when I started watching the documentary Brats about the 80s Brat Pack, and this movie is directed by Andrew McCarthy, who's a Brat Pack member, and he's also starring in it. At first I thought, this is really good. It is a good movie, but at first I thought, this is really good because I think it's going to say something important about how we talk to other people and the labels that the media and the writers might throw on people, particularly celebrities, and how that affects them. And maybe we should have more thought about that and reflect about the words we use to describe people. And it definitely did have that. But something unexpected happened, and it was surprising because it gave me a couple of conclusions about two specific people. And then it just got kind of weird. So after I watched it, I came up with a couple of theories about the Brat Pack and Andrew McCarthy and writer David Bloom, who coined the term. And I want to know what you think, because if you've seen it especially, I want to know if you felt the same way or you kind of picked up on the same things. But let's put a pin in that, because I think first it's important, since it's been 40 years, to kind of just establish what is the Brat Pack. On June 10th, 1985, New York Magazine writer David Bloom was doing a story on the young up-and-coming movie star Emilio Estevez, who had just done Repo Man and Breakfast Club, and the movie St. Elmo's Fire was just about to drop. So as the writer's hanging out with Emilio and his colleagues, Rob Lowe and Judd Nelson, he gets another idea for a story. To write about this up-and-coming group of actors who are starring in big, successful movies, and also how they're changing Hollywood, in that the business is now moving in the direction of focusing on very young teen audiences for the first time ever. Never been done before, and arguably hasn't stopped since. And this is all happening because of the success of this group. So David Bloom writes this article. He coins the term Brat Pack, and it's a brilliant term. And the media runs with it, it sticks, it attaches to these young people, these creatives, these actors. But then the article gets really weird because he starts to opine on their personalities and their social behaviors, and he talks about their talent level, which is not very flattering. And it's also inaccurate now looking back at the success of all these people. But he almost ranks them. It's just kind of strange and bizarre. So interestingly, if you look at that original article, here's who he thinks at the time of 1985, who the Brat Pack members are. He's got Tom Cruise, Sean Penn, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Tim Hutton, Matt Dillon, and Nick Cage. And then the movies that he thinks are Brat Pack movies. Now remember, it's 1985 and not everything has come out yet, of course, in his defense. But he thinks it's Taps, The Outsiders, Rumblefish, Breakfast Club, and St. Elmo's Fire. Now, since then, let's just say, from the cultural opinion, from my own opinion, here's who the actual Brat Pack members are, I think. Andrew McCarthy, Molly Ringwald, Ali Sheedy, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Judd Nelson, Demi Moore, and then kind of Brat Pack adjacent, I just list John Cryer and Anthony Michael Hall. There are other people who are kind of around at that time, but that's who I think the general Brat Pack actually is. And then probably the more popular Brat Pack movies would be Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, St. Elmo's Fire, About Last Night, and 16 Candles. Lots of different directors, but John Hughes is kind of the one who gets associated with them the most. Cut to 39 years later, since those days, and Andrew McCarthy comes out with this documentary, Brats. It's about McCarthy's view on how damaging the label Brat Pack was to him, and in his view, other members. He has on-camera interviews with a lot of Brat Packers where they casually talk about the entire experience from their side of this cultural phenomenon. He talks with Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, John Cryer, and others. He even sits down with the creator of the Brat Pack term, David Bloom. So as I mentioned, I think it is a good movie if you like the topic and you like those movies in that era. But it gets weird really quickly. And this is where the unexpected thing happened. Because, like I said, I was expecting this to be about how we talk about others and labels and how they are unhelpful and maybe even damaging to a lot of people. Clearly, it seems to have damaged Andrew McCarthy. But the unexpected thing that I got from it is that it turns into, in my opinion, and this isn't a personal thing. I don't know him. He seems like a nice guy. He's had a great career, Andrew McCarthy. But it kind of feels like a 90-minute Andrew McCarthy therapy session. What's really interesting is that if you read the original article, Andrew McCarthy isn't even talked about in the article except for one sentence, I think maybe two, where he just quotes an anonymous Brat Pack member opining on Andrew McCarthy. And so I wonder out there, and I try to make these thinking that the person that I'm talking about could be watching this. And so this is just my weird thing. It's an observation. But is it possible that maybe the term Brat Pack, although it could have been damaging, I wasn't there in the room for roles that came after the Brat Pack movies. Maybe it did affect Andrew McCarthy's career. I think he's pretty talented. I think he could have probably just busted through those walls, but I wasn't there. I don't know. But I do wonder if what really bothered him, because it would probably bother me the most, is that another Brat Pack person said in the article, whatever they said, like, he's too serious, or he plays the same role every time, and I don't think he's going to make it. Because the interesting thing that David Bloom does in the article is that he quotes that anonymous source, but he doesn't mention any sort of back and forth between Brat Pack members about him. So I wonder if, how human minds are. You kind of wander and you build things up and they snowball. If he thinks, well, okay, so my colleagues or friends say this about me, and then there's no back and forth, so it's almost like maybe it was just universally agreed upon that he's not going to make it, that he doesn't have the kind of talent. So I kind of wondered if maybe that was what bothered him most. The other really interesting thing is that in the documentary, he calls all these people, Demi Moore, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, and then when they're talking or when they first, he leaves messages or talks to them on the phone, it seems like there were a lot of people who were not in contact with him for 35, 40 years. And it starts to make me wonder, like, what their perception of him is. They seem to genuinely like him, but if they haven't kept in contact, I wonder what that's about, or if maybe they associate him with the Brat Pack almost, because when he's talking to Demi Moore, she says so many like interesting, beautiful, smart things to him, and it's almost like she looks directly at him and is kind of like, sweetie, look, you can't control what other people say about you, but you can only control how you react to it. And so while you were hung up on it, maybe still hung up on it, the rest of us kind of went on and did our stuff, and that's maybe, you get the sense, what I took from that was that maybe she was saying, you should have done the same thing, or you could have done the same thing, but you didn't. You're still kind of talking about it, if that makes sense. And there's another thing that kind of popped into my head, which was McCarthy, he seems like he came from a New York perspective, right? He went to acting school even though he got kicked out. And to me, as an outsider, as an amateur actor who's never been in anything except for this, is it possible that there's an element of that New York versus LA thing as well? And not just from Andrew McCarthy, but also from David Bloom. And this is the second weird thing. David Bloom in the article is always writing about how basically jealous he is, but he doesn't say it. He just constantly moans about, and no, I'm not trying to, it's not a personal thing if you're watching this, David Bloom. It's just, it comes off to me as a little bit envious and jealous, because he's in restaurants and clubs or movie theaters, bars with Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Judd Nelson, and it seems like every sentence, or not every sentence, but maybe every other paragraph is like, and more beautiful girls came up to the table and they're talking to them, and they're buying drinks for them, and everyone's gawking at them, and they had 3 Coronas, but they had 15 toasts again. And it's like, they sound like they're having a great time. And I don't know, if anybody else caught this, but it kind of felt to me like it was sour grapes. Like you wanted those women to come up and talk to you. Maybe you wanted a Hollywood script and you were just writing at the New York Magazine. I don't know. But that plays into what I was mentioning about Andrew McCarthy as well, that in comedy or in acting, it feels like, as just an average person, that there's a beef there, and it's mostly coming from the East Coast. And please let me know if I'm wrong about this, but it feels like there's sort of the attitude of grit and determination, and there's 10 million people in 30 square feet, and we had to fight and claw, and like we're tough, and all these pineapple umbrella drinking LA people with their glasses and their sunshine and their vitamin D and their happiness, like, go to hell. Who needs that? It feels like there's a little bit of that in there. Maybe from Bloom, I don't know. But for Andrew McCarthy, I get that sense that he kind of felt like he was going to be the next, I don't know, De Niro or Pacino, and it didn't happen. And maybe there's a bit of finger pointing going on. And I don't know if that was maybe the intention of this. Is it possible that he made this documentary not thinking about it being sort of therapeutic for him and talking with people? It did seem like he sort of came around. He did come around a little bit at the end. It felt like he was talking to people and they were sort of saying the things that I'm repeating now. And he's sort of opening up to the idea. But it does feel like there's, I don't know, I hate to say this, but sour grapes a little bit. Like you chose this path, and that's why I loved the thing with Rob Lowe also, when he was just kind of like, we were having fun. There were people coming up to us and buying us things, and we didn't pay for anything in the 80s, and everybody was sort of just flocking to us, and we were successful, and we made all these movies, and it was great. Rob Lowe seems like a really great guy to hang out with. But that's what the movie was in my eyes. And I do think it was good. I think it's a good watch, especially if you like the Brat Pack. Whether what he intended came through, I don't know. It especially at the end when it was David Bloom and Andrew McCarthy sitting in the same room talking, it was weird because it was like, it felt like David Bloom was looking at Andrew McCarthy thinking, I don't know why you give a shit about this still. And Andrew McCarthy was looking at him like, I don't know why you don't give a shit about this. You're mean and you hurt me. And it just was really kind of bizarre. But I don't know. Maybe I have to be in Hollywood to understand all this. But I'll tell you this. From all this, besides the stuff that I just told you that I took away from it, I also take away this. I would have loved to be at that table with Rob, Emilio, and Judd clinking Corona glasses, doing 15 toasts with the same 3 bottles in 1985. Or any year. Sounds like a blast.